Nobody expected this tape to surface, but once it did, there was no putting it back. What starts as a whisper inside Atlanta's entertainment circles suddenly explodes into a full-blown media firestorm. One name drops, then another, and before anyone can hit pause, Tasha K is on record claiming she's holding receipts that could rewrite everything fans thought they knew about Kandi and Todd. Is this another clout chase? Or did someone finally decide to crack open a private war that's been raging behind closed doors for years? According to insiders, this isn't about one argument or one bad night. This is about power, money, loyalty, and secrets that were never meant to leave the room. Why are old allies suddenly going silent? Why are phones being wiped, lawyers looped in, and friendships frozen mid-sentence? And most importantly, why now? Sources say the story was buried deep, protected by NDAs, influence, and carefully managed images. But once pressure builds, something always leaks. And when it does, it doesn't just drip, it floods. Tonight, we're pulling apart the claims, the timing, and the motives behind a bombshell that could shake reputations, business empires, and friendships alike. This is damage control now. What makes this situation impossible to ignore is how carefully it stayed hidden for so long. Kandi and Todd didn't just build a marriage, they built a brand. A polished, camera-ready partnership that survived reality TV edits, public feuds, and industry politics without ever cracking on the surface. That image became so solid that fans stopped questioning it altogether. And that's exactly why what Tasha K is claiming now feels so destabilizing. Because when someone attacks a brand built on stability, it doesn't sound like gossip anymore. It sounds like sabotage. According to people who say they've watched this relationship up close for years, the tension didn't start recently. It just went quiet. Behind the scenes, sources allege that Kandi and Todd's private disagreements stopped being arguments and started becoming negotiations. Not emotional conversations, but strategic ones. Who controls what? Who signs off on which deals? Who gets final say when cameras aren't rolling? And once money, power, and public perception get mixed into a marriage, the line between partnership and competition starts to blur. Tasha K stepping into this story didn't happen by accident. She didn't stumble into these claims. She positioned herself. Observers point out that she waited until the narrative was ripe, until the public trust in celebrity perfection was already eroding. According to her, what she's exposing isn't a sudden betrayal, but a long-running internal war that was never meant to go public. A war fought quietly through contracts, side conversations, and alliances fans never saw forming. Those familiar with Kandi's history say this pattern isn't new. She's been at the center of controversy before, not because of scandal alone, but because of control. Past disputes with friends, collaborators, and cast members often followed the same arc: public calm, private tension, then sudden fallout. Critics argue that Kandi's strength has always been her ability to manage narratives. She knows when to speak, when to stay silent, and when to let others look unreasonable for questioning her. Todd, on the other hand, has always been viewed as the quieter force, the one who plays support publicly while negotiating influence privately. That imbalance is where sources claim the real problem began. Todd wasn't just a husband. He was a producer, a partner, and allegedly someone who wanted more authority behind the scenes than fans realized. According to anonymous insiders, disagreements over business decisions became personal because money doesn't argue quietly. It demands control. And once that control is challenged, egos get involved. Tasha K claims that what finally pushed this into exposure territory was a breakdown in loyalty. Allegedly, someone close to the couple felt cut out, discarded after serving their purpose. That person, according to her narrative, didn't want money. They wanted leverage. And leverage comes from information. Suddenly, conversations that were once protected started sounding different when replayed without context. Plans that were once private started looking strategic. And the idea of a perfect power couple started to crack. Public reaction has been divided from the moment these claims surfaced. Some fans immediately dismissed it as clout chasing. Another attempt to stay relevant by attacking a respected figure. But others weren't so quick to brush it off. They pointed to past moments on screen where tension felt real but unresolved. The awkward silences. The conversations that ended too cleanly. The way conflicts were edited away rather than addressed. In hindsight, those moments look less like good producing and more like damage control. What fuels suspicion even more are the alleged financial layers involved. Tasha K suggests that behind the scenes, money was being moved in ways that raised eyebrows. Lavish spending justified as investments. Projects funded without clear transparency. Expenses written off as business necessities while personal lifestyles expanded dramatically. None of this has been proven, but the way it's being framed has made people uncomfortable. Because financial secrecy is one of the fastest ways to erode trust, especially in marriages built on joint ventures. Anonymous sources quoted in online discussions claim that arguments weren't just about cheating rumors or emotional distance. They were about ownership, about who gets credit, about whose vision mattered more. And when those disagreements couldn't be resolved privately, they were buried under public appearances and scripted unity. That works until it doesn't, because unresolved conflict doesn't disappear. It accumulates. The sarcasm in Tasha K's delivery is part of why this hit so hard. She didn't present herself as a concerned observer. She presented herself as someone amused by how long the truth stayed hidden. That tone alone triggered defensiveness from fans who felt protective of Kandi's legacy. But it also attracted viewers who believe humor is often the masked truth, whereas before it's accepted. What complicates things further is how carefully Tasha K phrases her claims. She doesn't accuse outright. She implies. She asks questions. She lets the audience connect dots. That technique is effective because it avoids direct statements while still guiding conclusions. And in the court of public opinion, implication can be more powerful than accusation, especially when it feels like the audience figured it out themselves. People close to the situation argue that if there was nothing to hide, there would be no need for silence. No sudden tightening of public messaging. No strategic avoidance of the topic. Yet, since these claims surfaced, observers have noticed subtle shifts. Fewer joint appearances. Carefully worded statements. A noticeable effort to redirect attention toward work rather than personal life. Those moves might mean nothing, or they might mean everything. The entertainment industry has seen this play out before. Couples who present unity while negotiating separation behind the scenes. Brands that stay intact publicly while collapsing privately. The shock doesn't come from the fallout. It comes from how long the illusion held. And that's what makes this story so captivating. Not the allegations themselves, but the possibility that the image was always more fragile than it appeared. As fans continue to debate, one thing is clear. This isn't just about one podcast episode or one controversial commentator. It's about whether people still believe in the version of celebrity relationships they're sold. Whether power couples can survive once the curtain is pulled back. And whether silence is a sign of innocence or simply a strategy. And just as the dust from these first claims begins to settle, new whispers start circulating. Whispers about legal positioning, about internal audits, about conversations that weren't meant to be recorded. And if even a fraction of that is true, then what we're seeing now is only the opening chapter. Because once a private war becomes public, it rarely stops at words alone. The reason those whispers are gaining traction is because silence in situations like this doesn't feel neutral. It feels calculated. When people with influence choose not to respond, audiences don't interpret that as dignity. They interpret it as strategy. And strategy implies risk. According to observers who track celebrity crisis management, the first 48 hours after allegations surface are critical. That's when narratives harden. That's when fans decide what version they're going to believe. And in this case, the lack of a clear denial only made the speculation louder. Online commentators started digging into old interviews, not to find smoking guns, but to find tone shifts. Moments where answers felt rehearsed. Times when Todd deferred to Kandi in ways that now seem less supportive and more contractual. Clips that once passed as normal relationship dynamics are suddenly being reinterpreted as signs of imbalance. That's the danger of public archives. Once perception shifts, everything gets reread through a new lens. Tasha K leaned into that reinterpretation aggressively. She framed her claims as confirmations of what people already suspected, but never said out loud. According to her narrative, this wasn't about discovering something new. It was about admitting something old. She suggested that industry insiders had been aware of the internal friction for years but chose silence because Kandi's influence made confrontation inconvenient. And inconvenience, in Hollywood, often outweighs truth. What really escalated the conversation was the introduction of alleged documents. Not released publicly, but described in detail. Spreadsheets, emails, contract clauses that supposedly favored one side over the other. Even without proof, the specificity of those descriptions made people uneasy. Vague accusations fade quickly. Detailed ones linger. And Tasha K knew that. By giving just enough texture without releasing anything verifiable, she created a narrative vacuum that others rushed to fill. Fans split into camps almost immediately. One side dismissed everything as a recycled attack on a successful Black woman, a pattern they've seen too many times to count. The other side argued that protecting someone from scrutiny isn't empowerment if it means ignoring legitimate concerns. That tension turned the conversation into something bigger than Kandi and Todd. It became a debate about who gets questioned and who gets shielded in entertainment spaces. Public reactions ranged from outrage to exhaustion. Some viewers said they were tired of seeing private marriages dragged into content wars. Others argued that when you monetize your relationship publicly, privacy becomes conditional. Kandi and Todd had built careers partly on inviting cameras into their lives. Critics said that invitation doesn't expire just because the narrative turns uncomfortable. The sarcasm in commentary videos ramped up as creators piled on. Memes circulated. Clips were remixed. Jokes about boardroom marriages and love clauses spread faster than factual discussions. Humor became a coping mechanism for audiences unsure what to believe. And while laughter might seem dismissive, it often signals that trust has already eroded. People laugh when they stop taking something at face value. Behind the scenes, speculation turned toward legal positioning. Entertainment lawyers on social media weighed in hypothetically, outlining what steps a couple might take if internal disputes risked becoming external liabilities. Prenuptial agreements, asset separation, quiet restructuring of joint ventures. None of this was confirmed, but the discussion alone suggested that observers believed this situation had financial stakes far beyond reputation. The idea of government scrutiny entered the conversation almost theatrically. Not because anyone had evidence, but because stories like this tend to escalate. Once financial secrecy is implied, audiences jump to audits. Once audits are mentioned, investigations follow in the public imagination. Tasha K didn't have to say any of it outright. She simply alluded to eyes watching and doors opening. The rest wrote itself. Todd's role became more scrutinized as well. He was no longer viewed just as Kandi's partner, but as a potential power broker operating in her shadow. Commentators questioned whether his silence was loyalty or calculation, whether he was protecting the marriage or protecting his position. In stories like this, motives become currency. Everyone's silence gets priced. What unsettled some viewers was how little direct emotion was visible from either party. No impulsive posts. No heated responses. Just controlled distance. That restraint can look mature. It can also look rehearsed. And in an era where authenticity is measured by immediacy, control can be misread as concealment. Industry insiders, speaking anonymously, claimed that conversations were happening behind closed doors. Not confrontations, but contingency planning. What happens if this narrative grows? What if sponsors ask questions? What if business partners demand clarity? These aren't reactions to guilt. They're reactions to risk. And risk management often begins before truth is even established. As the weeks passed, the story refused to die. New commentary kept it alive, not because of new evidence, but because of unresolved tension. Every time Kandi appeared in public without addressing it, headlines followed. Every time Todd posted something unrelated, it was analyzed for subtext. In the absence of facts, interpretation became entertainment. Some fans began expressing disappointment rather than anger, not because they believed the allegations, but because the image they invested in now felt uncertain. That emotional shift matters. Outrage burns fast. Disappointment lingers. And lingering feelings keep viewers coming back, waiting for resolution. Tasha K continued to tease future reveals, promising that what had been shared so far was only surface level. Whether that was true or not almost didn't matter. The promise itself extended the life of the narrative. It kept audiences engaged, critics skeptical, and defenders on edge. Anticipation became the product. At this point, the scandal stopped being about specific claims and started being about credibility. Who do people trust more? A controversial commentator with a history of pushing boundaries, or a polished celebrity brand built over decades? That question doesn't have a universal answer. It depends on the viewer's relationship with power, authority, and perceived authenticity. What's undeniable is that the fallout is real, even if the facts remain contested. Reputations don't need court rulings to be affected. They shift in conversation, in tone, in how people speak about you when you're not in the room. And that shift had already begun. As more creators entered the discussion, the story mutated. Each retelling added emphasis, removed nuance, and sharpened angles. What started as claims about a private war became a referendum on celebrity transparency itself. And once a narrative reaches that scale, pulling it back becomes nearly impossible. Now, with expectations set and tension unresolved, the situation stands on the edge of its next phase. Because scandals don't end with questions. They end with action. A statement, a lawsuit, a separation, or a revelation that reframes everything again. And according to the way this story has been unfolding, whatever comes next won't be subtle. The groundwork has been laid. The audience is primed. The silence is louder than ever. And as speculation hardens into belief for some and rejection for others, one truth remains. This story isn't finished telling itself yet. And that's exactly why this moment feels like a tipping point instead of just another viral cycle. Because once a story reaches this stage, it stops being controlled by the people at the center of it and starts being owned by the audience watching it unfold. Every move, every silence, every carefully chosen appearance now carries weight. And whether Kandi and Todd intended it or not, the court of public opinion is already in session. What makes this fallout different from past celebrity scandals is how intertwined everything is. Marriage, money, brand, influence, all wrapped together so tightly that pulling on one thread threatens to unravel the rest. This isn't just about whether claims are true or false. It's about whether the structure holding everything together can survive sustained doubt. Because doubt doesn't need proof to do damage. It only needs repetition. Observers point out that once fans start asking questions, answers become necessary, not because of guilt, but because of trust. Trust is the real currency here. Sponsors care about it. Business partners care about it. Networks care about it. And audiences care about it, even when they pretend they're just here for entertainment. When trust starts cracking, people start preparing for outcomes they once thought impossible. Some believe a public statement is inevitable. Not a defensive one, but a controlled clarification. Others think silence will continue, banking on time to dilute attention. Both strategies have worked in the past. Both have failed spectacularly too. The difference now is the environment. Algorithms don't forget. Clips resurface. Commentary loops back. Even silence gets archived. There's also the question of internal consequences. Even if nothing ever goes to court, relationships change under pressure like this. Business dynamics shift. Conversations happen that can't be unheard. Decisions get revisited. And while the public may never see those moments, they shape what comes next. According to people familiar with high-profile partnerships, once private trust is questioned publicly, it rarely returns to its original form. The hypothetical legal fallout continues to loom, not because anyone has confirmed action, but because the groundwork for speculation has already been laid. Viewers are now primed to interpret any change as confirmation. A new contract filing, a restructured company, a solo appearance. All of it becomes evidence in the eyes of an audience trained to read between lines. That's the cost of visibility at this level. What's striking is how quickly the narrative shifted from shock to expectation. At first, people were stunned. Now they're waiting. Waiting for a response. Waiting for receipts. Waiting for the other shoe to drop. And that waiting creates momentum. Momentum keeps stories alive long after facts stop emerging. Tasha K's role in this remains polarizing. To some, she's an agitator exploiting drama. To others, she's a catalyst forcing conversations people were too comfortable avoiding. Her history complicates her credibility, but it also adds fuel to her reach. Controversial messengers often spread stories faster than trusted ones, precisely because people tune in to see if they'll cross another line. And as this continues, the biggest risk may not be exposure, but erosion. Erosion of certainty. Erosion of admiration. Erosion of the clean lines between public persona and private reality. Fans who once defended without question now hedge their language. Support becomes conditional. Silence becomes noticeable. That's how reputations shift, not overnight, but gradually, through changed tone. At the center of all this are two people who once presented unity as their strongest asset. Whether that unity was real, strategic, or somewhere in between is now part of the debate. And debates don't end quietly. They end when one side controls the narrative or when something undeniable forces resolution. So, where does this leave everything? In limbo. A space where speculation thrives and certainty is scarce. A space where every update feels like it could be the one that changes everything. And until that moment arrives, the story continues to live online, reshaped by commentary, reaction, and anticipation. Now here's where you come in. Do you think this is a calculated smear designed to destabilize a powerful brand? Or do you think there's truth buried beneath the sarcasm and spectacle? Is silence a sign of confidence, or a warning that something bigger is being handled behind closed doors? And how much transparency do public figures actually owe when they've built careers on letting audiences inside their lives? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to know where you stand. If you've been watching this unfold, what feels off to you? What doesn't add up? And what do you think happens next if this keeps escalating? Make sure you like the video if you want deeper breakdowns like this, subscribe for more stories that cut through the surface, and stay locked in. Because if this really is just the beginning, you won't want to miss what comes next.